So, all right, so let's get started. Welcome to everyone. We're really excited to have you all here joining us and joining Harry and Jackie to talk about their farm and their transition. And we'll start with them in just a few minutes, having them take us all on a virtual tour of their farm. I'll just start by introducing myself. I'm Jan Joanitas with 3 New in the Countryside, and we have a couple other staff on this call. Brett, raise your hands, Brett, and Bonnie, and Matt, and we are working in conjunction with the Farmland Access Hub, which is a Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa network of organizations and entities that are working together to help beginning farmers access farmland and also help those who are looking to exit or to decrease their time, make that transition. So we've also been working with American Farmland Trust, and myself and Allison Volk at American Farmland Trust have been working closely with Harry and Jackie over the last several months, talking to them about their transition. And the plan is to try and find a way to transition the farm in a way that continues the kind of goals and the values that Harry and Jackie and their family have instilled into that property and the business. Also to do it in a way that hopefully makes it affordable for the next farmer, or farmers or group of people, whatever that looks like. And then we'll talk a little bit later kind of about timelines, what this exactly looks like, but I will give you a hint that this doesn't exactly look like anything yet, because there's not just one possibility. This is a transition that could look several different ways depending on who out there is interested and qualified to take on either one or more parts of the multiple business entities that they have. So it's not as simple as you just put your house on the market and you sell it, because that would be an option, but we're looking for something different here. So but we'll get into that. So with that, I think I will turn it over to, so Brett is our tech person here, and he's going to share his screen that has some photos from the Hoch farm and orchard. And then we will have Jackie and Harry. I think I'll just let you both introduce yourselves and then kind of walk us through the farm virtually. And I will just make sure I keep admitting people, and everybody is basically muted, but if you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat. We're going to be using that a lot to get information, sharing information, at least in this early part. Oh, I'm going to just do one more thing. I am going to say that I also wanted to say some thank yous planning this event, and we also did a live one back in October. We've had the help of Region 9 Development Commission, University of Wisconsin Extension, the Land Stewardship Project, and also all of this land access work is supported by the USDA Beginning Farmer Rancher Development Grant, and the grant from Bremer Foundation and the Lake Winds Food Co-op Roundup. So with that, I will turn it over to Jackie and Harry. Yes, can everybody see the slides already? Okay.
You want to start?
I guess so. And then are people going to type in questions as we're talking?
We're going to do the question and the answer at the end too, they said.
I know that.
Okay.
So both will happen.
Okay. Well, I'm Harry Hoch. My wife Jackie. We've been running Hoch Orchard and Gardens for over 30 years. A pretty diversified business. Let's see. You can kind of see in the background here. This is an aerial photograph. That's an aerial photograph of the farm. We're on an east-west facing ridge, a running ridge. So it's got a north side and a south side. And you can see the orchards are planted on the top. I'll let you chip in, Jackie.
Okay, well, we can go to the next slide. This is one of the oldest trees on the farm. This is an old-fashioned red delicious at the high point of the farm. Not really a tree that we'd want to grow in our growing system because it's very full of leaves and branches, and there's lots of places where bugs can hide and where it will stay wet, but it is one of the most beautiful trees on the farm, and it's got a wonderful crook in it where you can sit and kids of any age can climb it. And this is actually where our youngest daughter had her wedding this past summer. So a beautiful spot at the farm at the top where you can see that it slopes down on either side of that tree, like Harry was saying, either to the south facing slope or the north facing slope. In the background of this tree, you'll see some tall poplars, and the orchard is divided up into multiple zones using windbreaks to divide those zones up to specific cultivars and also to different growing practices in each of the zones. So this is just one of the oldest trees, probably what, 70 years old?
Not quite, but it's over 50.
Okay, you want to go to the next one? So this is Harry and I standing on a piece of property in Belize. So when it talks about that we're looking for a new chapter of life, like Harry said, we've been doing this for over 35 years, and we would like to have the orchard continue in some fashion. It doesn't have to be the way that we've done it. Sometimes I tell people it's unfortunate that we named this piece of property Hoch Orchard because it doesn't have to be Hoch Orchard, but we'd like to be able to think about different ways people could sustain themselves on this land. So this is Harry and I smiling at each other as we put the golden shovel into the ground of our new tiny home in Belize. The next slide. So this is that east-west facing ridge that Harry was talking about. You can see the zones set up by looking at where those windbreaks are, and you can see where the main farmstead is. We are on a gravel road with a pretty long driveway. The closest neighbors are over a mile away, so it's a pretty nice secluded spot.
I guess something I'll point out too is you can see the road in front of the farmstead there, and you can see the driveway going into the farm, and you see there's only about 50 feet on one side of the driveway and maybe 75 on the other, and that's all the road frontage we have. So it's a big rectangular, it's originally an 80-acre section, but a big rectangular piece of property with just less than 100 feet of road frontage. So that kind of shows why we can't subdivide this property. A lot of people will ask, well, can we buy part of the farm? Can we buy the back part of the farm? And really there's no other access other than that little bit in the front. And the county requires 150 feet of road frontage. And the road used to go right along our property for about half the width of it and then turn out, but they moved the road about 40 years ago. So we don't even have the minimum required road frontage for our property as it sits right now. But it's also, I mean, we don't need the frontage to run this business, but you would need it if you're going to subdivide, and it just really wouldn't work the way the property's laid out.
And this picture, this aerial photo, doesn't really do justice to the steepness of the hills. So if anybody's been in the driftless region, this looks rather flat. It is not flat. It is very steep in some spots. The lower corner picture is an outline of where the deer fence was set up and some of the posts for the deer fence. So we have a deer fence around the production area, and then a secondary fence that's inside the deer fence for a pasture fence. So when we move the animals around, they don't have to go through production areas. So we have the main deer fence and then an internal ring fence. So even though Harry talked about the size of the farm, the production area is designated by those green dots. And you can see some of the way that the orchards are laid out, kind of on the contour of the land. If you want to go to the next slide. So we divided up our business into 3 different enterprises. One being the production, Hoch Orchard and Gardens, fresh fruit, packaging, processing, distribution. And then when we started making apple juice, we had some conversations about liability. And the more processed the product is, the more we might want to think about separating that business from our fresh fruit. So we made Minnesota's Finest Fruit, which does now primarily apple juice and vinegar. We have done quite a bit of jellies and apple sauces and things like that in the past, but right now it's primarily our fresh juice business. And then the third business, we started Minnesota's Finest Fermented Products and have an on-farm winery. And with that on-farm winery, it's not like what you think of as a winery. We make hard cider, but we don't have a on-site sales room. And we actually partner with a local brewery that does most of our distribution and our canning. Harry makes the cider, and then the brewery puts the magic bubbles in it. We also work with a few other locations where we ferment the hard cider, and some places make brandy, and some places purchase the juice to make hard cider. So we've worked with quite a few different other alcohol businesses as well with that farm's winery license. So this is just some of the products. We actually now do most of our hard cider in cans, but we do have the 12-ounce bottles and cans. We do some ice cider and some still ciders. And then the wine is pretty naturally fermented wine, and with fruit on the farm and minimal sales that are on the farm.
And to clarify, we're not distributing any wine. When we were open regularly in the fall, we were selling the wine on site, but this isn't a product that we distribute.
So in the upper left-hand corner, that's a continuous belt press. So that is what we press most of our juice with. So there's 2 belts that the apple juice is crushed in that V-shaped piece of equipment, and the pumice drops onto in between the 2 belts, and then it's pressed out. And when it comes out the opposite end, that dry pumice falls down and is taken out of the building, and Harry actually uses that to feed the pigs. And we are inspected by the FDA, the MDA, and our organic inspector. So that space is a certified commercial kitchen. And when we put the cider machine in, we had to have it to the degree that it was able to be a certified commercial kitchen. So Harry often says that it's not big enough for one thing, but we can do lots of different things. Everything's on wheels. We can move things around and adjust as we need to. So for us, we bottle and sell to the food co-ops in half-gallon bottles. But in the right-hand side of this picture, you'll see some IBCs, and those are 275 IBCs that will press juice into and ferment the base of our hard ciders in those as well. The only other thing I would say about that is there was one piece of equipment in there called a cider sure, and so that is the way that we do the 5-log reduction in potential pathogens. So it's a UV light that the cider passes through. So it keeps it more like raw cider because it's UV treated but never heated. So I think that's a benefit. People seem to really like our fresh juice because it tastes more like a raw cider. Okay, now you can go to the next slide. You want to talk about that? Do you want me to keep talking?
Well, let's see, on the bottom right, that's the old spin sizer. So the apples come out of the apple washer and then they're divided into different sizes, and we're set up so we have a little semi-automatic bagger so we can easily make consistent 3-pound bags. And on the far right, we have a sticker gun so we can put identification stickers on the apples. So the way we pack is 3-pound bags or a loose pack bulk. Behind the line, you can see some different wines and juices that are fermenting back there in carboys. We use those to flavor the different ciders. Also still making a small amount of red wine and some white wines.
And then the upper left-hand side, Harry's pointing towards that brown door. That's a small cooler. And then behind where the people are standing is a larger cooler. So we have unpacked fruit in a big cooler and packed fruit in a smaller cooler. Do you know the sizes off the top of your head here?
Yeah, the large cooler for the apple bins is about 24 by 30 and 16 feet tall. And then the smaller cooler is about 16 by 30, and that's only 8 feet tall. But that's where we put the pallets of product and store all of the value added stuff before it gets shipped out.
Okay, we can go to the next slide. So this is a picture of one of our high tunnels, and it's a Haygrove 3-season high tunnel. So the plastic gets put on in the spring and gets taken off in the fall. And they're 28 by 200.
28 by 200.
And you can see that there's a divide in the middle of this. So they're actually, we're a relatively windy site. And when we left them at 200, we'd have a lot of trouble with the plastic, so that we actually make them 2 tunnels back to back. So they're 100-foot long of plastic. And we've had a lot better success with that. And the season extension is part of the reason we have tunnels. We've had raspberries at the farmer's market into November sometimes. And we had Harry's mom picking strawberries on Mother's Day one year. So that is true that there's season extension. But the biggest reason we added tunnels to the farm is any of the softer small fruits like strawberries and raspberries really struggle with our new climate paradigm, which is either dust or mud, meaning we get no rain or we get too much rain. And if you're in the middle of one of those seasons and you get a lot of rain all at once, the next picking is not really saleable. So the growth habit of the plants and the ability to control the water, all of those things are one of the ways that we're able to continue with some of those. Okay, now the presentation went away, so.
I think we're having technical difficulties, and I think
Oh, okay.
it's just still
So the high tunnels really were, we used to do almost an acre of raspberries, but with some of the struggles with climate and spotted wing Drosophila, we have definitely reduced the amount of berries that we're doing. So now
we were also set up to do small fruit for wholesale. So we're picking berries to sell to the food co-ops. And when the climate started going from what used to be dry, hot summers in the upper Midwest to rain events lasting 10 days long, when you've got a 15-day harvest of your strawberries, or 20 days and 10 or 15 days are rain, you basically get zero product that can be harvested and shipped to the stores. you can grow fruit that way and sell it at the farmer's market or retail it out of your own place. But if it's been rained on 2 or 3 days in a row, it's just too soft to bring up to the stores and to have them to put out on the shelf. So I think we were close to 2 acres of raspberries at one time, and now we've only got a couple 100-foot rows outside. Otherwise, all of our fruit, small fruit, is under plastic because there's just no way to grow wholesale quality fruit outside. And in our part of the state where we don't get the droughts the rest of the state does, we continue to set rainfall records when the rest of the state is in severe drought conditions.
So this picture is a picture of some of the Gloucestershire old spots and them traveling through the orchard, picking up waste fruit.
So this is after harvest. We've picked everything we want out of the orchard. The trees don't have any fruit on them, but there's a lot of drops. So the pigs are filling their bellies and chomping away on the apples that are on the ground.
They also do a little rooting, but pigs tend to be a little bit lazy. So Harry does cultivate under some of the trees. And when the pigs go into the spots where we open them up, they'll go to under those trees where the ground is a little softer and root a little bit. And they'll eat clover and they'll eat the apples. If we leave them in there too long, certainly they will root, because when you have animals, you need to be watching what they're doing, but they've been a great addition to the farm. Nowhere in nature do we have closed loop systems that don't include animals. So this is our way of experimenting with animals and having them be part of our system. So we do pigs and some sheep, and we've done different levels of poultry. We could go to the next slide. So we talked a little bit about the windbreaks earlier, and here's just some more pictures of the windbreaks and being able to see how the orchard is divided up.
And directly behind those bins of apples were a few hundred blueberry plants. And this is all right by the parking area up front. So we moved our blueberry bed up closer to the main packing facility, so it would be more conducive to pick your own. The middle picture is one of the orchard blocks with a surround kaolin clay sprayed on it. That's why it looks white.
Okay, we can go to the next slide. So this is one of the newer plantings. It's not this young anymore, but one of the things that is important is that we have flowers in the orchard all the time. So from our perspective, if we want to have the right insects and birds in the orchard, we're going to want to have flowers. So give things a home and something to eat. So there's the home, the birdhouse, and then the something to eat is the flowers. And there was a question that came up about needing to have the blueberries under the high tunnel. And no, at this point, we don't have the blueberries under the high tunnel. And they do have a thicker skin than a strawberry or raspberry. So we've been relatively successful with blueberries outside.
Yeah, the blueberries are not affected by rain the way strawberries and raspberries are.
Okay, we can go to the next slide. So I think this picture on the left-hand side is from the event we had on October 29th. So those are just some picnic tables and people that had come to see the farm that day. The open doorway is an enclosed loading dock, and where the tables are is where the truck would normally pull into there. When we are open, there's a set of stairs that let people walk into the packing shed through this open door there. So again, nothing too fancy, but a way for people to come in, see the packing facility and purchase product.
Yeah, so the way we're set up right now, our packing shed doubles as a place for retail sales and events, but it's not really big enough to have a large sales. So if somebody was going to invest in agritourism and a lot of on-farm sales, you'd have to add on to the building or put another retail space on. But for now, and if somebody was going to come on and continue the wholesale and try to grow the retail, there's certainly plenty of space to run a small retail.
Yeah, and then in the lower corner, there is just some bins of apples that were out that were picked on the day that people were here for the event. So you can see that that's how the apples come in out of the field.
You can see behind equipment storage shed. So we have quite a bit of storage space for the equipment now.
Okay, you can go to the next slide.
This is just one of the apple orchards. I think it's,
Might
no,
be the
there's
Harrelson.
still some apples on the trees there.
Mhm. So we had a very big crop this year. We had a few more apples hit the ground than we normally would like, but the pigs were happy about it. As you can see, I think he's looking at that last apple, hoping it'll fall to the ground so we can eat it.
I think that's the last slide.
Okay.
All right, thank you. That was great. I tried the spotlight thing. I don't know if that works for folks, but so that you mostly see Harry and Jackie. So I think well, just a little bit more, or maybe a couple of questions that I'll ask you, Jackie and Harry. Can you talk a little bit about the housing on the farm?
Sure, there is a 14 by 70 foot Holly Park mobile home. Is that right?
Yeah, 1970s era.
1970s era, and that's the house that Harry and I have been living in. It has new windows, but it needs some work on the roof. Then there is another Marshfield mobile home that is 80 by
16 by 80.
16 by 80 with an addition on it that has an office space and a small greenhouse, and that has 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, and that's generally where our H-2A visas employees have stayed. But it also has a big meeting room where people can meet and have conversation and communal lunches and things like that. And then there's an old house that's on the farm that Harry's redoing. Were you bumping me about something?
No,
Oh, and that house is a house that Harry's planning to redo, and we're hoping to build into the process that would be a house that Harry and I would have access to when we are in the Minnesota area. So that would not be a house people could move into, but it would be a house that the crazy old farmers lived in.
And one of the things when we were at the live event at the farm that you both said was that your willingness to take a variety of different roles, from potentially helping be involved to not being involved at all if the new farm folks that come in want to do that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
sure. Jackie and I have both done a lot of consulting and helped other orchards get set up and set up pest control programs. And I used to work for the Minnesota Department of Agriculture and integrated pest management. And I would be happy to either stay on as much as a consultant and help get the businesses going, or share all the experiences on how we've run things. Or if somebody's coming in with plenty of experience and they don't need a lot of assistance, I mean, we can just be here to answer questions when needed, or just consult on specifics, like maybe the organic pest control program or how some of the equipment works for cultivating and that sort of thing. But we have a project that we're working on in Belize. We've got land down there, setting up a permaculture farm on an eco community. So we'll be working on that. We have the freedom to come back when we need. Like this next year, we'll kind of be doing both, going back and forth. But if somebody takes over the farm and wants us here during the beginning of the pest control season, or to help with ideas on pruning and maintenance, or even to be here to assist during harvest, we have the ability to do that, to come back and work and help for weeks at a time. Or if you got a group of people coming in and they have all the input they need and they don't need another cook in the kitchen, I'm happy to go down to the tropics and leave you guys up here in the cold.
So I think that what we said many times in October was everything's on the table, meaning that we're willing to be flexible from having zero involvement to being pretty actively involved. Right now, it's just putting out there, this is something that we're thinking about, and can we find like-minded people who want to come up with a plan? And then it would be a negotiation and a discussion. And the hope is, by working with Renewing the Countryside and other groups, we have a neutral third party that can advocate, because it can put people in a funny position. Anyway.
And maybe to clarify on the old farmhouse, what we want is a lifetime estate in this one little farmhouse on the property here. And then that's where Jackie and I will stay when we're in the country. And we'll have a place to stay if we're needed or wanted for consulting. So we'll be able to be here when needed, if needed. This old farmhouse is 14 feet by 22 feet. So it's just the original ladder frame or balloon frame constructed house. And it's got windows and siding, but we haven't finished the inside of it yet. So we're going to be working on finishing that the next couple of years, and then we can have a little ground around it, maybe 75 feet by 100 feet. So we just need a little lot with it. But beyond that, that's the only connection that we're going to keep to the farm, is having this place to live. And then, like I said, that would be defined as a lifetime estate. Something that was common 50, 100 years ago. It was very common for an older couple or a widow or something to just stay on the farm while relatives or a new owner runs the farm. So it's what we're proposing isn't anything unusual. It's just not very common this day and age. So the way it would work is, when Jackie or I leave the farm for the last time, then the house just becomes one more building for the new owners of the farm. If somebody buys, from what I've been told with zoning, if we have this lifetime estate, they're still able to build a new house on the farm. But when we are gone, our house couldn't be rented out. There couldn't be a second residence because there's not enough acreage according to the county rules. So there can really only be one residence on the farm. Housing for workers are not considered residents. So like these other mobile homes, they could not be rented out. So you couldn't say, okay, we're going to get some extra income and advertise and have people live in these houses. But you could house your workers in these extra mobile homes.
And it also could be office space, or
Yep. Mhm.
Oh yeah, storage, or
even be like your store, the little,
Yep. Mhm.
and I'm sure people
Okay.
could stay in it too. It could be a farm stay or guest house. It just can't be another residence.
full-time residents, yeah. Right, so there's some questions here, and I don't, Bonnie, do you want to ask these?
Yeah, so one of the questions is, the changes in weather patterns resulting in more rain. Do you guys have an effective means or landscaping to capture water and mitigate potential problems from excess water?
So we've done quite a few things to try to deal with that. He's got some pocket ponds that he's built throughout the orchard to kind of control where the water will go. Around all of our tunnels, we planted a lot of rhubarb, and rhubarb sells okay, but not as much as what we've planted. And part of the reason why we planted rhubarb is the big root system that it has, and it can absorb a lot of water pretty quickly. So if you can imagine a 200-foot tunnel, a big rain, the water coming off of it, that's been helpful. So ridgetop, it's helpful. The water tends to flow away, but like I said, he's made pocket ponds and increased the amount of frogs that we have on the farm, and has water available for the animals.
A new station alert.
Tried to do some of that to mitigate some of the water issues. Most of the annual vegetables that we've done on hills. We've got some equipment that actually makes the hills and so forth, so that they'll dry off a lot faster too. The walkways will be a little wetter, but
And the perennials are pretty much on the contour, so we don't have erosion issues with the orchards. If somebody was going to try to plant on these hilltops in large open fields of vegetable plots, you definitely would get erosion with the rains we're having. I mean, we've worked up a plot that's 50 feet wide and 100 feet long, and we get a 2-inch rain and there's a gully wash through it. So I've been trying to establish sod where these natural little swales are. But I think for vegetable production, definitely the raised bed system that has the vegetables up off the ground a little higher than where the water runs off, and then running those on the contour as much as possible so that so they're not creating gullies. And then we do a lot of mulching. We have a lot of open fields that we can raise sorghum and different things on, and use that to mulch annual vegetable production.
Great, thank you. Next question is relating to staff. Basically, how many staff, full-time staff, have you needed to operate your diversified system?
it depends upon the crop size and how much we're doing. I think that over the last few years, we've been downsizing. So at the peak, we would have had probably 3 year-round full-time people, and then up to 12 in the peak of the season.
And at that time, that would have been when we had several acres of summer fruit. And what I found is it's about a 20-to-1 ratio. So I can have enough staff to harvest and take care of 20 acres of orchards. You need the same amount to do 1 acre of berries. So when we had 2-3 acres of berries in the summertime, we were basically able to keep 10 people working with harvesting berries every 2 to 3 days, and then packaging and shipping them, and then cleaning and freezing the excess. But the last few years we've downsized out of a lot of the summer fruit, and a lot of the raspberries now we harvest to make our flavored ciders. So we're not wholesaling berries the way we used to. So now we're able to get by with 2 or 3 good workers to harvest the apple crop and to do the maintenance throughout the summer. So this past year we had 2 full-time workers on H visas from March 1st till the end of November. And we had 1 seasonal intern. She was here for 7 months?
Yep.
And then we hired 1 extra person to work 3 months in the fall. So that's what we had this year. But
And Harry and I.
I'm here full-time, but Jackie works full-time off the farm. So she only worked 3/4 as much as me.
On the farm.
Exactly.
Okay, so the next two questions I think are maybe potentially related. So the homestead that you guys are hoping to have in your lifetime estate, being the only allowable residence, how would you foresee new owners being able to live and have ownership of the land? And then also, you know, is there land on either side of the property that could add more road frontage that could potentially be purchased to expand that and make it more accessible?
Yeah, I already covered this, but I'll do it again. The road frontage is limited. There is no more road frontage.
The people who
We-
own it won't sell.
What?
The people who own it,
You mean neighbors?
yeah.
Okay. So there's no more land to purchase around us. As far as the zoning here, the new owners could buy the farm, and with our lifetime estate, the new owners could build a house on the property wherever they want. Because our little estate is right in the middle of the yard. I mean, it's not on the road at all. So the property would be grandfathered with the amount of road frontage it has. The new owner could put on one residence on the farm.
And that could be the residence you're currently living in, or if they wanted to put in something different, they could do that, correct?
Correct. Yep,
But
so
then-
yeah,
There will be temporarily two residences as long as Jackie and I are alive, if somebody builds a new house.
And so so just
makes
to
sense?
explain to everyone, so it's a special case where because Harry and Jackie have lived there and they're going to do this lifetime estate, the county will allow two residences while Jackie and Harry are alive and living there. Once they leave, then there will only be one residence allowed. And that's where Jackie and Harry were saying that the house they'll be living in could be turned into other things, but couldn't be a
Yep.
full-time resident.
right. It could be a farm stay, it could be an office, it just couldn't be someone's residence. And who owns, and the land would be owned by whoever purchased it. So Harry and I wouldn't own the land, we would just be able to have access to that house.
A subset of this other question I'm going to read, Bonnie, is let's see, where would the owners live when you've, okay. So in the worker, I guess, Michelle, you asked this question about, do you have any more questions about the workers and that piece, or was that clarified? If you could type that in, or if people want to unmute and ask questions, that's fine too.
Yeah, maybe if you can read the questions, it'll make more sense to answer them.
Yeah, so this one was where would owners live when you've the only allowable residence and the workers are in mobile units? Can you please clarify this? Thank you in advance. So I think you clarified the residence piece, but I don't know if there's another question there about the mobile unit.
Well, if there's 3 housing units and we're in one of them, then the new owners will have to decide, are they going to build another unit for themselves? Are they going to live in one of the 2 mobile homes and use the other for housing, like what we're doing right now? Or do they not want workers on site? Then they could live in one of the houses and use the other for storage or whatever. But that would be totally up to the new owners, where they wanted to live and how they wanted to use the housing units. If they wanted to build, they would have to work through the county and get the right permits. But my understanding is they could build a house here.
I think you've also explained to me that if there were other folks that wanted to live in temporary housing that wasn't a residence, like, I don't know, a yurt or something like that, that would be potential if there were more people on the farm, then would
Yeah, if they
dependent on
were
the-
working on the farm, so if there was more than one business, for example, if someone was running a business on a farm, they could have a place, but there's weird rules. We'd have to start to talk about how that would all fit together. So someone could potentially put another house on the farm, but it couldn't be a permanent residence. So we just have to, or you'd have to go to the county and see if you could get a variance, and they're not very good at giving out variances.
Well, unless the person is fully involved in the farm. So I mean, the concept is that it's zoned agricultural, so they don't want the land to be cut up and used for multiple residences. But they're much more willing to have other people living on the farm to work on the farm. So if somebody rented out, say the vineyard, and that person was running the retail sales and had the vineyard and wanted to run the winery, if they're full-time employed on the farm and are leasing the land, they could put a temporary house up here, so that anything that's, that can be moved at the end of the lease is the way it was described to me. So yeah, if somebody wanted to come up and put up a yurt or put up another mobile home, they should be able to get the right permits to be able to stay there. But when the lease was up, that agreement then is done and that house has to be able to be moved. So that's how I understand it.
So there's a couple of questions about what we're doing to try to find a buyer. Is the business for sale or is it just real estate, and what the sales price would be? So we're working with Renewing the Countryside and the American Farmland Trust to figure out how we do this to transition the farm. So we haven't listed it per se like you normally would a piece of property, but we're looking for people to buy the property, and we're working with them to work through this process. And yes, the businesses would be for sale, but then there would have to be conversations about the businesses. It's not just the land, but it's the business as well, potentially. Harry and I own the land as Harry and Jackie Hoch, and the businesses are separate, but they could potentially be together. The philosophy of everything's on the table, everything really is on the table, and this is an opportunity to find the right people who want to have those more in-depth conversations about how do we move forward with this. Is that a reasonable?
Well, unless they're asking do we want to sell the businesses separately? And the answer to that is no, we're not going to sell the businesses separately. When we sell the land, our businesses will end. If they want us to consult or work with them and they want to take over our business, for example, the winery, somebody could continue the winery, I think, under the same business that we have. And we could just turn it over to them, or we could just end our business and they could license a new one. But we are keeping all of these businesses going, but none of them are thriving right now. So any aspect of the farm could be taken and some energy put into it, but we're basically just keeping things going. So we have customers, we have distribution, but as far as a big money-making business that we can put our price on, no, we're not going to sell the businesses. We might just hand over the business if somebody wants it, or if somebody only wants to run part of the farm, we could keep some of the other businesses going, or help somebody else to lease it. But the purchase will be for the land and buildings, and then we'll probably sell the equipment separately. So if somebody wants to buy all the packing equipment, the winemaking equipment, the farming equipment, we can work out a sale for that. Or if somebody's coming in with their own equipment and they don't want any of ours, then we would sell it separately and possibly have an auction.
And I think as far as the question related to finance, what type of down payment, and could we consider a contract for deed? everything would be on the table. Yes, we would consider a contract for deed potentially.
I don't know if you, well, I think Linda's question is, in addition, that is it just the business with the real estate? And are you interested in helping the new owners transition? I think you've definitely said that you would be willing to do that in a variety of different ways. I think I would go back to that question of how we're working to find a buyer. And I think that this is one of the ways, by having events like this. And so we're really looking to all of you, some of you who may be interested yourselves, but others of you who may have networks of people who might be interested in this. I think, one thing is that there aren't very many people who are farming apples organically, and particularly for wholesale. So there are skill sets. This isn't a beginning farmer sort of enterprise. This is an enterprise that's going to require people who have farming experience in this kind of farming. So we're looking nationally. We're trying to get the word out so that we can get some interested folks who may be the right match, or it might be a combination of people who are the right match. And I will also say that in terms of the price, and Jackie and Harry, you can tell, I'm just going to say that isn't settled yet, but the plan is that it would be less than the market rate for the land. And part of that is the plan to be able to put an ag conservation easement or something like that on the land. And also, willingness for Harry and Jackie to sell it at less than what they could get if they just went out to the real estate market and sold it for anything. Is that accurate? Did I say that right?
Yeah, kind of. I guess if somebody's looking for a number, I mean, the county assessment of the market value was what, Jackie, when you put the two plots together?
About 480.
480,000. And those are not reliable estimates. I mean, that's not, if you asked a realtor, it could be way above that. But that's what the tax assessor says the market value is. On the other side, we're most likely going to be signing a purchase agreement with the American Farmland Trust. And then the Farmland Trust would then be working out the sale with the potential buyer. So that gives a lot of opportunity to the new buyer to work with Renewing the Countryside and the trust to set the price and the terms. So there'll be a lot of options to work with them. We're going to subsidize or do a low price to the trust, and then the trust has a lot of leeway in there on how they set up the price, the purchase price to one or several buyers. So I think if people have specific questions on that maybe Jan can set up something with Allison at the trust. If people are seriously looking at, financing and want to, so that'll take us out of it and give you more options. So we'll sell out for a low price to the trust, and then the trust will set the price and the terms to the new buyer, with the intent of setting up something that will make them succeed, allow them to succeed.
And the Farmland Access Hub has navigators that can work with incoming farmers and can help, I think, in the financing piece. That I don't think at this point should be something that people is stopping them. I think those are conversations that we would want to have further conversations, because I think there's some innovative options out there. Okay, so has the property been appraised?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Once we sign the when we sign the purchase agreement with the Farmland Trust, then we'll be getting the property and the equipment appraised.
Is there room for an additional commercial kitchen should the next owner need a larger facility?
Yes, the property is 65 acres, so there's room for lots of options.
I mean, there'd be limitations with power and water. So if you're going to add a kitchen and keep all the other businesses going, then you'll have to probably spend another 20-30 grand to upgrade the power at the pole, the service. You may need, if you're going to start a new kitchen from scratch, we have a modern water system, but I don't know if it would pass, to start another new food processing. We're grandfathered in with what we have, but from what I've been told by our inspector and by others, that the rules are getting more and more strict on the water system. So another whole kitchen facility might have to get its own electrical service or increase the electrical service on the farm. And then also you might have to drill a new well or have somehow a separate water system. But those are things you'd want to check into. But we do have the zoning. We have the conditional use permit to have the processing facilities here. We're zoned ag, but we've got the conditional use permits to do ag processing.
And, again, Renewing the Countryside and other of our partners are happy to help navigate some of the technical assistance for those things if people are interested in doing those other sorts of things. Lois, good to have you here. Lois asks, how old are the apple trees and what varieties are there?
The orchards vary from, new rows just put in the last 2 years, to the oldest probably being the late 1990s. So everything here is modern plantings on moderate to high density. What else was on the question?
How many varieties? We have way too many varieties, probably.
I mean, we have probably a third is Honeycrisp, and then we have a lot of Harrelson, but we have close to 100 varieties. We've got about, let me think, between 5 and 10 acres are also designated for hard cider production. So there's varieties that have been planted for or grafted over to specific hard cider varieties. Then we've got about 5 acres of disease-resistant cultivars. So they're varieties that are field immune to apple scab and cedar apple rust. So they are more feasible for growing organically in this climate. But I'd say overall, we have all modern varieties. We don't have any managed varieties, something like Sweet Tango or other varieties where you have to pay a yearly management fee. But other than that, we have a lot of modern varieties. So we're not talking about an old orchard with varieties that you can't sell anymore. But at the same time, there's a lot of varieties because we designed and developed this whole system to be a wholesale farm that has a shelf presence in like food co-ops, starting with berries in the spring. And then we have a lot of early varieties of apples. And then we can usually offer 5 to 10 different varieties at any one time from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. So yeah, we're designed with multiple varieties over the full harvest season.
The follow-up question is there room for additional species of woody crops?
Yeah, there's probably 15 acres that are open that could be I mean, the acres on top, we've been keeping open in case somebody wants to grow vegetables, because you can really only grow them on the more level parts, but they could certainly be planted to apple trees or other woody perennials. We also have a plum block and an apricot block that are between 1 and 2 acres each, surrounded by windbreaks that probably, well, they could either be partially replanted or removed and then something else put in, because they've kind of gotten towards the end of their real productive years. And we lost a lot of the stone fruits when we had 30 below weather a few years ago. And we also were tried to push the envelope on USDA zones, and we were trying to grow. We were betting on global warming and planted things that weren't fully hardy here. But turns out we're going the other direction now, because while our winters are getting warmer, our spring and falls are becoming more erratic. So these less hardy varieties of tree fruits and bush fruits, whatever, they're getting knocked out in the spring and the fall. Basically, they survive the cold winter, but they may come out of dormancy too early and then get frozen off. Or a few years ago when we had single-digit weather before Thanksgiving, a lot of the European plums weren't hardened off enough yet, so they died to the ground. We tried a bunch of sweet cherries. Some of them survived the late springs, but then they got nailed when it got 25 below. So anyway, there's plums and apricots could be cut out or filled back in, or they could be replaced with things like hazelnuts or hickory or different things like that.
I will say that I got to pick an apricot fresh from the trees at the Hochs this summer, and it was like one of the highlights of my summer. Okay, so are there zoning restrictions or ownership restrictions in Minnesota and your county or township? So outside of those that you've mentioned.
Well, being zoned agricultural is about as strict as you can get, I think. I mean, there's just ag-related businesses can be done here. So, like a farm stay or something like that, but any other business would require some kind of a variance and a change, some kind of extra permitting. But it's fairly, Winona County is fairly progressive in its rules and restrictions.
And in terms of ownership restrictions, I will just say that Minnesota does have a corporate farm law, which is really an anti-corporate farm law, but that does provide some restrictions. And I'm happy to talk to anybody about that if they want more details on what that would restrict. Okay, so someone asked how many acres, and 65, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And about 10 acres of woodland in there.
Okay.
Everything
And
else though is fenced. The pasture, the orchards, everything is fenced with deer exclusion fence.
So Paul asks what is the yearly revenue? Is that something you can speak to?
Well, the peak when we had all these ventures and 12, 15 employees was what? We were just looking at that the other day.
So the total income or the
revenue, yes.
Oh. It's been so variable and it's hard to really describe. If
What was the
someone
number
wants
you
to,
said the other day?
the highest revenue was about $500,000.
And this year is about
200,000. And it's variable because we're scaling back and decreasing what we're doing.
Great. Yeah, and I think
and we're also
people who are-
wholesaling more things. So like when we're retailing everything, or not retailing, when we were selling direct all of our hard ciders and selling a lot of packaged fresh fruit, that creates a lot more revenue with a lot more labor. And now, for example, our hard cider, we produce it in 265 gallon tanks and deliver it to the distillery or to the brewery or whoever's going to, finish the product. So we're still selling a lot of volume, but it's costing us less to make the product and we're getting less revenue from it. So if somebody wanted to make increase the revenue and invest in on-farm sales, the revenue could shoot way up. Or if somebody wanted to take on the hard cider and do their own distribution, because under the farm winery law, that you're basically your own licensed distributor. You make a lot more money than when you bottle it and sell it to a distributor, or like in our case, where we just sell it in bulk and sell the alcohol in a bond-to-bond transfer. So yeah, the revenue can vary to the degree of value added that you want to put into it.
Well, and I think we'll, at the end of this, we're going to talk about, those of you who are interested in exploring this more, there'll be more opportunities to dig deeper into some of these things kind of at a later time. So how much pasture land is there?
Not including the woodland, I think it's around 10 acres. And that would be the steeper land inside the deer fence, but not in perennial or annual production.
So because you pasture pigs and I think sheep under the trees, so that's additional pasture land, but you're saying like separate pasture land.
Right, yeah, there's a ring pasture bordering all of the production areas.
Okay, is it likely that the CUP would be, conditional use permit would be granted to new owners?
I think that's fairly likely. It was not a difficult process.
Okay. And Linda, who I think has left, said thanks to RTC and this creative conversation, and best of luck to Jackie and Harry. You made a great business on a beautiful piece of land. Love your Belize dream. That's a nice little thing. Other questions that folks may have? And if I missed your question, let me see if I, okay. Well, we don't have to go until 6. We put lots of time in, not knowing how many questions there would be. I guess I would give one more chance for anybody to ask any questions. Hal is asking how American Farmland Trust works. I can answer that on behalf of Allison, and we can, as Harry mentioned, we can follow up. If anyone wanted a follow-up conversation with her, we can do that. We scheduled this without checking her schedule, and she had another appointment. So American Farmland Trust is a national organization that works to advocate for farmland preservation, has helped done things at the policy level to make funds available to put agricultural easements on farmland, and to direct some federal funds that were just for easements that weren't related to agriculture, but just for kind of nature conservation easements. So they advocated to open it up for agricultural land too. And they hold easements across the country, but it's only been in the last few years the last couple of years as I've worked with them, that they've really started working a lot more in the Midwest. On the coasts, there are a lot more farmland trusts, but there aren't as many, or very few actually, in the upper Midwest. And the newest thing that we've done with them is a buy, protect, sell program, which is similar to what would be happening with the Hochs. We did this with Singing Hills Farm earlier, or last, yes, still this year, where American Farmland Trust has basically a revolving loan fund where their staff are actually able to purchase farmland when there's and then hold it while finding the new owner. They place an agricultural easement on it generally. That requires funds, and in the Singing Hills situation, we actually raised the funds from private donors. In some situations, the state has those funds. In other situations, the current owners donate kind of the value of that easement, therefore lowering the price of the farm. They have a great website with a lot of information. They're a fairly large organization, but I found them very, very good to work with on a number of different things.
And if I could just add that, their concept is to keep farmers on the land. So, they're known to work with the farm, and in some cases buy the farm at full value, put an easement on it, and then revalue the farm. So now the value is lower, and then use somebody like Renewing the Countryside or somebody else to help raise the money in between so that they can sell the farm at a much reduced price to a farmer. And then and then there's restrictions, so it has to stay a farm. So if somebody bought it at a discount and then went a year or two and said, well, I guess this isn't working for us, they can't just turn it around and put it on the market, make back that discount that they got. The trust would have first right of refusal to buy it back. So if somebody didn't want to farm it, they could get out and get their money back, their investment back, but they're not going to make a killing after somebody like Jan worked her butt off to get the price down and help get you started. And then you just, then they can just turn it around and sell it at market rate and see it go into GMO corn and soybeans, or become, just a recreational property. So the trust is there to help farmers continue to use the land. So Jackie and I are we feel like we can trust selling the land to the Farmland Trust. We're confident that we can go that route, and they can find people to take over the farm. So Jackie and I don't have to work as realtors and select people and try to put an easement or anything like that on it. That's not our area of expertise. So we really want to see this continue as a farm. We're going to discount our price to the trust, and then the trust can either further discount it or help get operational funds or something like that. But I just wanted to add that to Jan had a good description of what they're doing and what they've done. And this is just kind of the overview that I've learned about the Farmland Trust.
And Bonnie added that the easement also protects the land from development forever. So it's a perpetual trust that will keep the land in farming. So it's a conservation tactic as well. All right.
Oh yeah, this is
other-
Chris. I'm sorry
Yes.
to interrupt. I've been listening for a while without visual. Figured out how to get audio, I think. But just want to say you guys are doing the right things on getting the trust to hold the development rights and keeping that life estate. So looking at this from my younger cousin, and it's got to make money, but the only way we can really farm and work the land is if you take care of those other aspects of it. So appreciate you doing that.
Thanks, Chris. All right, any other final questions or comments? Jackie and Harry, anything, any final comments you want to say? Otherwise, I'll give my 30-minute speech. I'm kidding.
I think they heard enough from me.
Yeah, I think both our voices are about done as much as we can with our COVID recovery here.
Yes, yes. I don't think everybody heard that you all are recovering from COVID. Paul asked, can you accommodate beginning farmers? And
But I think-
Yeah, we'd
I
be
think it
happy
depends
to
on what a
help.
beginning farmers is. Yeah. So Paul, we could talk more about that. So my email is there. Please feel free to reach out to me. We will follow up with you all because we have all of your emails, because we were smart this time and had people actually have a ticket. With the Hoch's help, we put together kind of an overview of the business. It doesn't go into great detail, but it answers a lot of, some of the questions that came up here. And we're also working on an FAQ document to take all of the questions that have arisen here and at the live field day that we'll have that available too. So we'll be in touch. And again, if you want to talk more about these, well, there are a couple more here. You can reach out to Bonnie too. But if you want to talk more about this, please reach out to myself or Bonnie. What we're trying to do is sort of in some ways be the first point of contact so that Jackie and Harry don't get 7,000 calls that they have to, answer, because some of this information we've got put together and we can share it. And then eventually we will, if it looks like it's, if it makes sense to have you sit down with them and talk to them, we will definitely help make you that connection. All right, I think that is, I think that's it. Thank you all so much for coming. And this really has been an experiment of sorts. And we really appreciated your all taking part of it. And again, if you are interested, get a hold of Bonnie or myself. And also if you know other folks who may be interested, please send us their names or send them to us so we can help share the information with them too. All right, so with that, I think we'll say good night and look forward to talking to folks later. Have a nice evening and be well.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.